Welcome back to Sorare Assist. Adam here, and a scouting video coming up for you today, focusing on players for the Underdog and Specialist leagues for game week 260. Before all that, if you do like this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. For the month of April, I'm giving away a Magnamed Ozdiev rare card, 30 of 100. This competition is being run on my Twitter page, at Sorare Assist. To enter, you need to subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter, at Sorare Assist, and retweet the pinned tweet on the Sorare Assist Twitter page. At the end of the month, I'll pick a random follower on Twitter who has carried out the entry criteria, and that person will win the Magnamed Ozdiev rare card. I'll announce the winner at the end of the month. On Twitter, so make sure you follow me on there. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and for more free Sorare content, please check out SorareAssist.com. You can also become a patron of Sorare Assist for budget player scouting, and also become a member of this YouTube channel. More information by clicking that join button below. If you've not signed up to Sorare yet, then sign up, use the link below to get a free limited card and 13 common cards. Okay, now that's out of the way, let's get stuck into today's content then. So as I say, today I'll be highlighting some Sorare players for the Underdog and Specialist leagues for game week 260. All of these players have a perceived favourable fixture for the upcoming game week. The players look to be a regular starter and are capable of some higher scores than their last 15 suggests. I've also focused on players that are at a reasonable price, and I'll be highlighting goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders and forwards where possible. Also make sure to check the player's L15 on Sorare, as some scores on Sorare data and Sorare may vary. Or the player may have a fixture coming up before the next game week which could potentially affect his L15. As always, make sure to do your own research, and none of this content is financial advice. Let's have a look then at the leagues this week and the entry criteria and rewards for each league. So here are the tournament rules for game week 260. So in the Underdog League we've got the max average last 15 score of 40. And in the Specialist League we've got max one player with an average last 15 score of over 60. So that's going to be a star player. Minimum of 2 players with an average of last 15 score below 40. Then we've got no captain as normal, and maximum 2 players from the same team as well as normal. So these are the tournament criteria and the number of cards available to be won. So there's actually an Underdog rare this week as well, and also a Specialist super rare as well coming up. So in the Specialist super rare there's a chance to win a unique card, 3 of them available. Underdog rare, there's 30 rares available to be won in that division. Specialist limited, we've got 500 cards available, mixed between rare and limited cards. And then in the Underdog limited division we've got 500 limited cards up for grabs. So without further ado, let's get stuck into all these players that fit into this criteria, and that is of course the players that have a last 15 score of 40. So we'll start with the goalkeepers, and as we know, goalkeepers are expensive, but these are the cheapest goalkeepers that I could find with a favourable fixture coming up. So first up is Lorenzo Montipo of Hellas Verona. Now as you can see, in game week 260 he's actually got a game away to Inter Milan. Now I'm not sure why this is coming up as a favourable score for goalkeepers, but this might be potentially because they make a lot of saves against Inter Milan, something like that. Now if you look at his scores, he has got some high scores. These are obviously going to be games where he's got a favourable fixture and he's managed to keep a clean sheet against maybe a bit more of a weaker side in most cases, I would suspect. And as this is, well, not potentially a very easy fixture, playing away to Inter Milan is never going to be easy. This is flagging up as a favourable fixture for goalkeepers on Sorare data. Montipo is going for around £134 for his limited card at the moment. Next up we've got Peter Leuenberg of Groningen in the Netherlands division. So he's actually away to Heerenveen, and there's a good score there for goalkeeper scores against Heerenveen of 61. Looking at his scores, he is a consistent starter for Groningen, and as you can see he's playing a regular 90 minutes. So he is capable of some high scores, as you can see here, and it looks a good choice here with an L15 of 38 in the last 15. You can get his limited card for around 127. So moving on to defenders now, and the first one that I found is Javian Brown of Vancouver Whitecaps. Only 23 this guy. He's got an L15 of 35, and looking at his fixture, is at home to Portland with 54 average score for defenders in the last 10 against Portland. And if we look at this score graph, we can see that he is capable of some high scores, 60s and 70s, and again these are probably more than likely come from favourable fixtures. So he's a definite option, and he's only around £7 for his limited card, and you can get his rare card as well if you want to do that for around £86. Next defender I've gone for is Goalkeepers of Go Ahead Eagles. He's got an L15 of 35, but an L5 of 62. So he is showing a bit of form towards the end of the season. Now he's got a favourable fixture at home to William II, who look certain to get relegated, and defenders generally score an average of 58 against them in the last 10. His scores wise, well, as you can see, he's got some 2 fantastic scores in the last 2 games, and he's also got a couple of high scores as well previous to that. His limited card is going for around £8 and is rare for 77. Next defender is Manuel Gulde of Freiburg in the Bundesliga. L15 of 33, but he has got an L5 of 48. If we look at his next opponent, it's away to Frankfurt, an average of 57 for the defenders against Frankfurt. He's also got some high scores in this range as well here, as you can see, so he's capable of getting those high scores against potentially weaker sides. Limited is going for around £3 and his rare is going for around 54. Next up we have Mats Digel of Go Ahead Eagles again. So I've actually got two Go Ahead Eagle options here, so you could potentially have a defensive stack there if you was really on a low budget. That would be a 2 under 40 players covered as well, of course. He's got an L15 of 38 at the moment. And if we look at his opponent, again, it's William II, where the average for defenders is around 58 points. And his scores are looking good as well, especially more recently. He's got a couple of scores there, one being a score of 83. You can get his limited card for around £5 and his rare for around 64. Moving on to the Japan League now, a defender that I found there is Ryu Takao of Gamba Osaka. Last 15 of 36 and an L5 of 44. He is playing away to Shimizu S Pulse in game week 260, and defenders generally score an average of 60 points against them. As you notice here though, he has got a fixture in game week 259, this player, against Kyoto, so keep an eye on his last 15 for potentially buying him. Looking at his score graph, he's got some really good scores in this area here. He's also got a 76 more recently as well, so he is capable of the high scores. You can get his limited for around £4 and his rare for around 78. Another defender that caught the eye is Christian Gunter of Freiburg. So again, we've got 2 Freiburg defenders there in Gunter and Gulde, if you fancied them potentially to keep a clean sheet or have a good performance. So his L15 is 39 and his L40 is actually 42. And he's away to Frankfurt, as we know, and an average of 57 for defenders against that team. If we look at his score graph, this is where you can see some really consistent high numbers, some scores in the 60s, 70s, and a 93 in there as well for good measure. You can get his limited card for around £10 and his rare for around 167. Final defender is Denis Appiah of Nantes in the French League 1. L15 of 39 and L5 of 44. His opponent is Brest and they're away to them in the French League and an average score of 56 for defenders expected. If we look at his score graph, we can see he has got some good high scores here, including a 64 in his last match. Limited card is going for around £5 and his rare is going for around £60. So it looks another good decent option. Not only that, he's also got another favourable fixture in game week 262 if you wish to use him potentially in that game week as well. So we'll move on to the midfielders now. The first one I've gone for is Rayani Abid of Kasımpaşa in the Turkish League. He's got an L15 of 36, a low scoring 28 in his last 5, but his L40 is looking more impressive at 46. And he has got quite a favourable fixture as well, away to Fatih, and the expected average of defenders against them is 54. Looking at his score graph, he has got some good scores in this area here where he's got a few 80s and a 90 as well. So is he due a good game? Potentially, because he's not had one for a while, but he is playing a fairly easy opponent in the upcoming game week. You can get his limited for a very cheap £3 and his rare for just under £100. Another midfielder I've gone for is Kazuya Yaramura of Kawasaki Frontale in the Japan J-League. 32-year-old has an L15 of 39, but a more impressive 47 in his L5. Now in his next game, in game week 260, is at home to Kashiwa. Midfielders have an expected score of 54 against Kashiwa. He also does have a game though in game week 259, so make sure you check his L5 before potentially purchasing this player. Looking at his score graph then, he has been playing pretty decent for Kawasaki Frontale recently and played 100% of the last 5 games. He's got a 64 score and a 78 score more recently as well, so he could potentially be an option if Kawasaki find their form again. His limited is going for around £10 and you can grab his rare card for around 120. Next up we have Kevin Agudelo of Spezia in Italian Serie A. Only 23 this guy, he's got an L15 of 38 and an L5 of 37. Seems to have recently started playing more minutes for Spezia in the league, and the next opponent that they've got is a fairly easy fixture away to Empoli. Midfielders have an average of around 55. Looking at this score graph then, you can see some good scores here, 3 in a row just about, 68, 67 and 65 scored, and he's also got some good form here as well, and seems to be playing most of the games more recently for Spezia, so he's definitely an option there. Limited card is going for around 17, and at the moment it looks like you're going to have to buy his rare card on the secondary market. So the next midfielder is Mohamed El Hankaroui of Groningen, L15 of 38 and an L5 of 46. Now his next 3 opponents look pretty tasty to be fair. So his next game in game week 260, which is what I'm covering here, is away to Heerenveen, and the expected score for midfielders against Heerenveen, the average score has been 54. Then is at home to Heracles, and midfielders have an average of 56 against them. And then finally he's got Waldwick away, and his expected score again at 56. So he has got 3 good favourable fixtures here, so one potentially worth considering. And if we look at his scores, he has got some decent scores here, some high scores, an 86 here as well, away to Utrecht. So he does look a very viable option. You can get his limited for around £11 and his rare for around 159. Next up we have Cameron McKeenan. So there is a slight chance that Ostend could get relegated, so it might be worth considering that. They're not in the relegation zone at the moment, but there is a potential that they could get relegated if they do drop more points. So next up they have got fellow relegation battlers, and that is Eupen, and they're away. And the average score for midfielders against Eupen is currently 54. McKeenan does seem to have been playing the last couple of games for Ostende, so he could be a potentially good option. He's also scored a 76 game here in game week 254. So could this be another game week where he's going to potentially get a high score? His limited card is going for around 450 and his rare for 62. The final midfielder I've gone for is Mani Harit. Slightly more expensive than I would have liked, but this guy is a quality player. I'm not really shown his full potential yet, but he has been playing more minutes for Marseille more recently, and he's played in 100% of the last 5 games. His L15 is 40 and his L5 is 53. His next opponent in game week 260 is at home to Montpellier, and midfielders score an average of 56 against the French outfit. So he could be a potential option, especially with these 2 scores that he's got recently, including a 91 and an 81 in his last game. Another one to bear in mind though, he has got a Europa League conference match before the match against Montpellier, so make sure to check his score in that game, because this could potentially rule him out of the 40 score in his L15. His limited is going for around 35 and you can get his rare for around 190. So on to the forwards then. And the first one I've gone for is Maximiliano Ruti of Austin in the MLS. So the next game for Ruti is at home to Minnesota. Strikers generally score an average of 55 against them. He's got an L15 of 40 an L40 of 45. So he is capable of better scores than he's been getting recently. As you can see from his score graph, he has got a few 70 scores and 67 and a 63 in his last game. So when he does score, he is likely to get a fairly decent score, which is what we're looking for, of course, in the SO5. You can get his limited for around 26, and his rare is going for quite an expensive 303. So the final forward that I've managed to find and the final player for this week's scouting video, Jaroslav Nizgoda of Portland Timbers. So his L15 score is 37 and his L5 is 43. Next opponent for Portland is away to the Vancouver Whitecaps. Forwards generally score an average of 57 points against the American side. And as you can see from Nizgoda's score graph, he has got some decent scores here. Does seem to be getting regular minutes as well now for Portland. So is this the game where he's going to get another one of these 60 odd scores? That's definitely going to be a good thing if you've got him in your side. So his limited is going for around £20 and his rare is going for around £200. So that was all the selections for this week. Hope you did find this useful. I'm thinking of potentially doing these videos every week now for the weekend fixtures in the Underdog and Specialist leagues, scouting out those players where you need the average L15 score to usually be around 40, 45, 50 and so on. This is going to give you some options to potentially fill those 2 slots in your teams, or even in the Underdog division, where of course you're going to need a full team of these L15 players. If you like this video, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and for more free Sorare content, please check out SorareAssist.com. Links to all this good stuff are in the description. If you've not signed up to Sorare yet, sign up using the link below to get a free limited card and 13 incoming cards. Okay, thanks for watching and I'll see you again soon.